2, 1, action.
Great. Recommended action that the Board of Education leaves executive session and returns to the regular meeting at 7:42 p.m.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Happy New Year, everyone. I hope everyone here with us tonight and listening on the live stream and recording had a joyful holiday season with time to reflect on the year that passed and look forward to the opportunities that 2024 brings. We gathered as a board and governance team last week to engage in a retreat where we were able to reflect on our successes and challenges and begin and will continue to explore the ways in which we can work together to most effectively benefit our students and community. Thank you to my colleagues for our session last week, and I look forward to our future retreats. Since our work session at the end of December was not recorded or live streamed, I also wanted to take this opportunity to note that prior to entering into executive session at that meeting, we had a few action items on the agenda. Among them was a donation for which you will see an amendment actually tonight from the Croton Caring Committee and the Knights of Columbus to be used to clear the outstanding school lunch balances of PVC students who qualify for free or reduced meals. So I'd like to take this moment to thank the Croton Caring Committee and the Knights of Columbus for their generous support. We are lucky to live in a community where people care for and help each other. And lastly, I hope that many of you are able to join us tomorrow evening here at the high school for the Steve Iggy Aguado celebration that'll be held at 6:30 p.m. in between the girls and boys basketball games. Steve Aguado was a beloved member of the Croton community, and we will pay tribute to Steve and his family, celebrating the decades of support, dedication, and inspiration he provided to countless student athletes, coaches, and teams here in Croton and the surrounding areas. It is sure to be a special event, so I hope you can join us. And that concludes my president's report. We will now open hearing of the public, and we ask that anyone who would like to address the board do so at the podium. You can provide your name and contact information on the sheet provided, and please keep your comments to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Riley, live in CHUFSD. Happy New Year, everyone. Hope this is better year than last year. I'd like to make a couple of comments. In the cemetery over here, we have two prominent people. One is not as well known as the other. One is the playwright Hansberry. The other is a American rifleman named Rifle Jack Peterson from the Revolutionary War. His biography is incredible, what he went through, but he was one of the patriots that drove the vulture off. So allowed Andre to be captured and Arnold to flee. Otherwise, there's a good chance he would have won the Revolutionary War. Him and his buddy Moses Sherwood, a young man much younger than him. Rifle Jack was black. He lived to be more than 100 years old. He's one of the one or two, because there's a question about the second one. Revolutionary War heroes are buried in the Bethel Cemetery across the way. Like the statue in Tarrytown, especially in Black History Month, or not in Tarrytown, but in Yorktown, there's a terrific statue to the second Rhode Island, which was a black legend of the Revolutionary War. I proposed that, and the Daughters of the American Revolution agree, that there should be a statue to Rifle Jack Peterson. And I think it's appropriate that this, him and his buddy, Moses Sherwood, and that the school should sponsor that. So I urge you to bring that up, and I'd be glad to chip in $250 to the effort and background. Also, there's a mill in the Croton River which is about to dissolve because of the rain, which has not been taken care of by the state. It begs for an excavation, so if you have students that need some projects, that mill has never been excavated properly, and it's about to be destroyed by water over the next years. The principal part of that mill is about to cave in. I'd like to mention a couple of things. When you go to these meetings, you don't really learn much. You learn about the personalities of the people, what they think is important, etc., but you don't have that back and forth questioning that the public would like to see, especially about many issues. One of the things I noticed, and I have 5 items, but I want to look at one more. Stopped at the crosswalk down by PVC. I noticed that all the kids coming in the school cross the crosswalk. And I noticed the overwhelming number of those kids were obese. They were fat. They were much too fat for their age. And, which is a problem throughout the United States. It's also a problem for your, it's really a parent's problem, but physical education department. In that vein, well, they're talking about a draft. For the record, draft eligible kids in general, only 12% of American young women and men of draft age can pass the physical.
Thank you. We have no other speakers. I will turn it over to Superintendent Walker for his report.
Well, thank you, Sarah. Happy New Year, everybody, and good evening to all the Tigers watching both in person and at home. It's always a pleasure for me to get a chance to share some of the fantastic things that have occurred in our district since the last time we were together, some of the fantastic people who were involved in making those things happen. And in this case, I want to make sure that there are a couple of upcoming dates that are on the public's radar as well. So without further ado, maybe you could. You don't mind? No, you can go ahead. I want to start, as we always do, by issuing a Tiger welcome to a new member of our staff. This is somebody who has already become such a favored and wonderful classroom for us to get a chance to visit as an administrative team. And this is Derek Davis, who's a member of the math department at CHHS. Derek joined us after having significant experience in Poughkeepsie City Schools as well as Scarsdale. And to be in his classroom is to be in an exemplar of the idea of what school can be. The way that he engages with our students, the way that he thinks about learning as a construct and allows students to go through productive and creative struggle. It is one of the special places in our district to visit on a regular basis. And I got a chance to spend some time with him of course, in the Tiger Welcome discussion. And one of the things I always ask is, what surprised you about being a part of this system since you've been here? And what he said was, he said, I don't know if it's a surprise, but the promises that the team, that the administrators made to me about what it feels like to work here, they were all true. And he said something I'm gonna remember for a long time, which is, this is the only job I've ever had that if I won the lottery tomorrow, I wouldn't quit. I thought, what a special thing to say about what a privilege it is to get a chance to be a part of this team. So Derek, welcome to the Tigers. We hope it's a long and really happy and amazing career for you here. And as Sarah said, I also want to make mention of, this is a really special community event tomorrow. And we talk a lot about family as members of the Tiger community, and certainly Iggy, although I didn't have the pleasure to know him, is a member of this family. And it'll be an honor for me to be there tomorrow, along with what sounds like scores and scores of other people. So I appreciate the arrive early advice on this. Limited parking, both I think are going to be true. This will be a special experience to be a part of tomorrow. I hope to see everybody there. Also wanted to mention, special event of a different kind, perhaps, variety show next week, Friday. So rehearsals are happening in robust fashion. We're getting very little work done in the district office and distracting the people who are trying to do work. But we look forward, the entire district office leadership team looks forward to, I don't know, gang, demonstrating we have a limited threshold for embarrassment. I think, again, that's maybe all we can promise, but certainly no better cause than getting a chance to entertain people, to raise money for our PTAs and for SEPTA, who do so much for every Tiger student in our community. So if you haven't bought tickets yet, please do. Maybe a couple still left available, we'll see. But we'll make it worth your while. It'll be a fun night. Join us next Friday. Also, one of the special things about CHHS is the round robin opportunity, where students get a chance to hear from the faculty about course and learning experiences for the upcoming year. And certainly one of the special things this year was to get a chance, the faculty to get a chance to talk about the new interdisciplinary course opportunities at the high school. We know that those courses are one of the many things that make CHHS a unique place to be a learner. And this opportunity in general, the round robin, the way it's put together, it symbolizes that kind of excellence. And I think hopefully the kids know that that's something that is unique to the experience of being a Tiger student here. So we look forward to a productive, hopefully some thoughtful, risk-taking series of course selections from our students based on what interests them, what brings them passion and joy in their learning, and then to helping support them as we build the schedules for them for next year. Also, believe it or not, since the last time we were together for a business meeting, we had all of our winter concerts as well as the CET sing-along. They were special, right? Just fantastic to get a chance to come together with so many members of the community and hear great music and celebrate a really special time of the year. I wanted to give a shout out to John and his son Trevor, who performed as part of the CET sing-along. Again, just kids feel, I think, as though the district office are a part of their experience, and John certainly leads the band in more ways than one on making that so. Also like to make a mention anytime I can, when I get a chance to note that a faculty member's passion project is resonating with them and is resonating within the system. And so this is, of course, Wendy Armstrong, member of the art department and faculty at PVC, whose passion project has been creating what she's called the Corridor of Courage. And so each time I get a chance to walk through PVC, I see this continue to grow, and something that clearly has resonated with her and with the student body at PVC. And now I know that Greg is part of creating a website to help provide information about each one of these important figures in our history. And so this has been truly a labor of love, a genuine passion project for Wendy. So I wanted to thank her for inspiring our Tigers and all of us with her passion. And speaking of things that inspire responses, so Theo, I know you're not in the room, so I'll miss out on the opportunity to see your chagrined face, but we're going to substitute quantity for quality tonight. So I have 4 jokes. Let's see how these go. Why did the photography student get detention? He couldn't focus. Okay. Hi, hello. Okay, let me try that. What kind of shoes do artists wear? Skechers. All right, just getting warmed up. Okay, third one. This one from a board member, so be careful before you groan. 5 ants rented an apartment with 5 other ants. Now they're 10 ants.
But
Yes. Anna, thank you. I appreciate it. Yes, very good. That's the kind of content I come here for. Last one for the night. There was a king who was 1 foot tall. And he was a terrible king, an awful king, but he made a great ruler. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. My work here is done. Have a great evening. Tough crowd.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
You would have heard much more.
Yeah.
Much more.
Only Theo did.
Hi, Theo. What do you think?
There you go.
Not bad, not bad. The last one was not bad.
Okay, all right, thank you. 1 out of 4, I'll take it.
There you go. And thank you for that report. And we'll now turn it over to Denise Harrington Cohen for her business report and preliminary discussion of our budget.
Thank you.
That's how you
Yeah,
are.
hard act to follow here.
You don't have jokes in yours?
No jokes, no jokes. I'm just trying to keep people awake over here. So, good evening. Tonight will be our second budget presentation. And just a little agenda. We are going to review our budget timeline, talk about our district priorities and vision, discuss the state of the state address that was given by Governor Hochul on Tuesday, look at the baseline for our budget development, some cost drivers, revenue and expenditure assumptions, navigating the public education landscape, and then next steps and our future discussions. So this is an overview of our budget development timeline, which spans from September to May. In essence, we assess and analyze our current budget effectiveness. We review financial data, enrollment projections, anticipated expenditures, funding sources, et cetera. And we collaborate with our building leaders and stakeholders, identify educational priorities and needs for the upcoming year. December, we have our preliminary budget proposals that are established and submitted. Throughout the remaining months, we evaluate them, refine them as more and more information becomes available to us from the state and otherwise. And also during this time, we hold public budget sessions and work sessions to gather feedback. And then the final phase is when the budget is brought to the Board of Education and for approval with the community. And then that budget becomes the financial plan for the upcoming year. That's a look at that. Some of our strategic goals. So our district goals and vision guide the budget development process by identifying our priorities and educational objectives. This is what we aim to achieve. Our strategic goals, which you're familiar with, and we are going to talk more about in our next budget presentation by people far more eloquent than I am regarding these initiatives. But essentially our strategic goals and our vision map priorities guide the budget process. This is our plan. All of our budgetary decisions and considerations revolve around that. In our discussions, you'll hear a lot of language about opportunities for students in the area of, well, let's just say this, as these budget discussions begin, we talk about these topics: curiosity, culture, well-being, innovation, etc. What results from that are interdisciplinary courses, peer-to-peer visitation, student engagement, student voice, participatory budgeting, looking at our system with an MTSS lens, with an equity lens, and what does that look like in real terms? How do we prioritize that financially? Some of our budget priorities, of course, to keep our students at the center of our decision-making. Align our budget, again, with our vision map and goals. Enhance the integrity of our educational programs. And as we do that, we support our student development. We also serve as a benchmark of excellence for other communities, and we increase the value of our district to our residents and homeowners. Of course, we do this with the focus of financial responsibility and accountability to our residents. We have always maintained compliance with the allowable tax levy, which we expect to do this year as well. Support the goals of the Board of Education, provide high-quality professional learning and staff development, to preserve and enhance our learning spaces on campus and enhance our facilities, to fulfill all contractual obligations, and of course, to comply with new and existing mandates, which are bountiful. Let's see, state of the state. So on Tuesday, the governor addressed the public with the state of the state address, though she didn't really discuss any school funding in particular. She did lead off her commencement speech by talking about some tough decisions that the state is going to need to make, tackling fiscal issues and structural deficits, managing the migrant crisis, federal relief, sunsetting, etc. Also, she has said to report that any of her budget recommendations from her subsequent departments should be at a zero basis. None of that was discussed in her presentation. but that's how she led off. So, so there is some uncertainty, especially with the federal funds sunsetting. But some of the school impacted proposals that she discussed were startup funding for schools to establish their own mental health clinics. Not a lot of detail on that. Establish a back to basics reading program with 10 million targeted for training for teachers and teaching assistants. A worker protection initiative, which implied that it would support air conditioning in schools, and it said to improve cooling capacity in school buildings. And then lastly, break time compensation for nursing moms in the workforce. So more to come in a week or so. We expect her to come back with some state aid runs and proposals. Okay, push ahead budget. So what is the purpose of that? So the push ahead budget is the baseline for budget development. It allows us to begin the process and projections at a time when most of the other relevant information doesn't exist yet. It's emerging and developing. What is the process? We move expenditures forward from the current year with any known increases for collective bargaining agreements, healthcare, retirement, and many of those we don't even still have yet, but we do projections on that. Oh, what happened? Okay. Some of our budget cost drivers. So labor and benefits represent about 75% of our budget. So we have projected salary increases for most of our bargaining units, as well as fringe benefits, and I'll talk more about that later. Some of the other implications on this budget in particular is the loss of CRISA and federal funding. It sunsets this year, and over the past few years, close to $1 million has been received by the district. So we will be evaluating those services and goods that were retained through that funding, determine what we'd like to have moving forward, and that will have to be absorbed by our operating budget. So that is a consideration. Of course, special education costs vary significantly from year to year, depending upon our population. It is an ever-moving target and has significant implications to the budget. So we will be preparing for that. The other thing that is critical is that the cost of goods and services is in alignment with CPI and inflation when we are confined to a tax cap. So we have to consider that as well. And it's getting cold in here, so I'm sorry about my shaking voice. We'll have some tea. I'm going to go into this a little bit more deeply, but basically as a district, we have very limited sources of income and ways to receive income. We have state, local, and miscellaneous aid. So state aid, which I'll talk about in the next slide. Then we have local revenue, which is our tax levy, which we'll talk about, and then miscellaneous revenue, which is primarily from Westchester County sales tax and interest earnings. So state aid, I'd like to focus on our primary state aid sources, which are foundation aid, transportation aid, building aid, and BOCES aid. Foundation aid last year was the full implementation of the foundation aid phase-in. They have made us whole. You'll see it's the top line there. It looks as though we're projecting a $52,000 decrease. That is only because our 23-24 foundation aid was reduced. So we are going to be receiving the same amount of aid, but it looks over projected in 23-24. The second factor is transportation aid, though And let me just go back a little bit. Transportation aid, building aid, and BOCES aid is expense-based aid, where foundation aid is based on student need. So though our transportation costs did rise from one year to the next, the transportation aid factor was decreased this year. We went from 43% to 40%. So that 3% or so is going to show a reduction. These are all projections. Building aid, so you'll see the huge decrease in building aid. This is because 2 of our larger projects are phasing out. They're on their 15th year of aid, so we're only receiving a half year of aid for those. So those are falling off. That is a reduction. And then BOCES aid is a slight increase based on our anticipated expenditures. Okay, next, our tax levy. That this screen tends to drive people crazy, so I'm going to just try to keep it really simple. So the tax levy is one of our primary sources of income. It represents about 70% of our revenue. New York State law provides the formula in which we calculate that levy. We take the prior year levy, and then factors are applied to that to account for growth within the community and inflation. Then adjustments are made to that amount for any pilots that exist. And then lastly, there is a sub-calculation which is entitled the capital exclusion. It looks at our debt versus our state aid, and then that is reduced from that. We'll talk more about that in our next session when we have some real figures to look at. So this is just a look. This screen here is the controller's history of the allowable tax levy growth factor. As you can see, inflation, we still don't have our numbers for this budget year. They're supposed to come out in late January. But right now, inflation is trending at about 4.3%. We're still held at that 2% growth factor. This is a history of the growth factor over the last 4 years. As you can see in 2021, the CPI was 1.23%. Therefore, our allowable increase was 1.23%. But as you can see over the years, there's a larger gap where inflation is trending at 4, 8, and 8%. We are capped at a 2% growth factor. Tax-based growth factor. This is another factor that's calculated in the levy, and this is basically brick and mortar development within our community. It is 2 years behind, so it's not always reflective of actually what's happening. It measures the quantity of change in assessments impacted by new construction. If something is demolished, taken off the rolls, all of that is calculated into that. Our preliminary growth factor is 1.0059, which is a slight increase from last year. This number can change up until March 1st. So this is an overview of our budget projections. So as you'll see, the first line is pilots, payments in lieu of taxes. So for this year, we will be bringing on a pilot based on the Maple Avenue development, equivalent to $70,000. That pilot will come in as revenue, but will also be deducted from our tax levy. So it will result in a reduction to our levy. Next year, the pilot will be added to the top of the calculation, so it'll level out. We are expecting to see a little growth in county sales tax. Sales have been high within the county, and we are trending well above our original projections. Interest and earnings, we've left flat. We are not at that 250,000. We're actually much higher than that right now, but we do not expect the interest rates to maintain at where they are as hopefully inflation goes down. Then building use fees, other revenues related to BOCES refunds, workers' comp refunds, insurance recoveries, miscellaneous revenue. Then we have our state aid, which is about 9.14. Then we have to be determined the amount. So we use reserves and fund balance to balance the budget when necessary. We have utilized that over the years. Probably about 3.5% of our budget is covered through a give back to the community through appropriated reserves and fund balances. So those numbers, we expect to have closer to reality numbers in the coming months. Some of our expenditure assumptions. So we have CBA, and I apologize for the acronym. I hate when that happens, but our collective bargaining agreements. We have 3 collective bargaining agreements that are open and unsettled at this time. We have the teacher's contract, the aides contract, and our custodial contract. We are needing to make projections for that in order to move forward with the budget. Staffing will be informed by enrollment, programming goals, and clinical needs. Health insurance increases, we voted on that last 2 weeks ago, and we are looking at a 5% increase in health insurance costs, which is considerably when you look at the rate increases that we've had versus the cost we're paying per family and individual statewide. The consortium is doing very well that we're a part of. Employer pension rates. So we pay a portion of the salaries for all of our staff, whether it's teachers, custodians, clerical staff, drivers, etc. So the teachers' retirement projected rate is expected to go up between about 10 to 10.3%, not final yet. ERS rates, that's the employee retirement system, are going up from 13% to 15.2%. FICA wages at 160,000. So we also pay, FICA is Social Security. We also have to pay a 7.65% on top of salaries, on top of pension to cover those costs. And then we're also considering the impact of the increased minimum wage, which the governor has, I'm not sure if it's official law yet, but every year for the next 2 years, there'll be a 50-cent increase onto the minimum wage. This is just a look at retirement rates. So back in 2015, they were much higher. Then they started to decline. The market indicates that these numbers are going to rise as interest rates and earnings on investments decline. The fund will need to support that through employer contributions. Other expenditure assumptions that our special ed placements will minimally remain stable, but our wonderful Rachel DePaul over there has a handle on this, and we are just finalizing some of the projections with the information that we have now. BOCES administrative capital and service costs we received preliminary numbers. They're going up between 3 to 6%. I will also add that we get approximately 45% aid reimbursement on all of those expenditures, but it's still a hit to the budget. Utility costs trending at between 7 and 10%. Though our solar panels are generating tremendous amount of energy for our district, and we are seeing our numbers decline. Con Ed, for example, just signed an agreement with a retroactive increase for a year ago, that will now be compounded onto our utility bills. So even though our costs and our usage is, even though our usage is going down, our costs are expected to go up. Debt projections to incorporate our future facilities projects. So again, we had a tax neutral project that was approved by the voters last year. And our debt service for this upcoming year is expected to decline considerably in 24-25. Technology increases, certainly technology is advancing quickly. We want to stay ahead of it and also maintain our one-to-one device program. Also, we expect to maintain all athletic and co-curricular programs. So navigating the public education landscape, of course, we need to look at the national and state economic landscape. The fact that the COVID funding is aging out, inflation, et cetera. There's some instability that we need to consider. Tax cap, of course, does not reflect the reality of wages and the cost of goods and services. We are looking closely on a regular basis at enrollment, student needs, special education placements, as I shared. We have thriving and developing in district programs that are keeping and retaining more of our students in district. However, there are instances when students need to be outplaced. And for example, one residential placement could cost upwards of $200,000. One student, one placement. So we need to plan and prepare for that. Of course, we want to comply with all previously negotiated contractual obligations, looking at pension and health contributions, BOCES fees, et cetera, and make sure that there is some margin within our budget to support any unfunded mandates. Next steps. Everybody's still awake. Next steps, we're going to monitor the state budget development and aid projections, review our enrollment, assess staffing based on the priorities and needs of each of our school buildings. We're going to project and implement salaries for our collective bargaining agreements. Again, the fun part is really incorporating these instructional initiatives into the budget. The rest of it's a little boring and mundane. Of course, prioritize and refine building departmental requests. We need to look at our vehicle needs for next year. If we're going to be purchasing them out of the budget, putting them on possibly the ballot, or if we are going to ban them, which we have in the past, issuing a bond anticipation note. And then again, we're continually reassessing our current year expenditures. Looking at where we are today is an invaluable tool to projecting moving forward. Because remember, the budget is created 10 months before it's implemented. So we really need to look at how it's performing now. This is a list of our future budget discussions. February 1st, we'll have a budget update on the tax cap and any new developments. February 15th, we'll be looking at the vision map, technology and athletics. March 7th, our general support operations. So that's buildings and grounds, transportation. We'll have our proposition resolution. March 21st will be our building level budgets, curriculum and instruction, and pupil personnel services. April 4th, the board will be asked to adopt the superintendent's budget. May 9th is our public budget hearing, and then May 21st is the vote and trustee elections at the high school. How we doing?
I love it, Penelope.
Yes. So
Anybody have any questions for Denise?
I just have a question regarding the pilot. So you said it was $70,000 this year.
And then you said it would be taken off next year from the.
So the formula says your pilots for last year, plus your pilots for last year, minus your pilots for this year. So we had none for last year and we have 70 for this year. Next year, we're gonna have 70 from this year plus the 70 from this year. So it's gonna wash, where now it's actually reducing
Right.
our levy.
So I know, administration and board leadership met with the village this week. Was there any discussion regarding future pilot programs?
Well, I spoke with, Brian, I don't know, not at this past meeting, but the previous meeting, and then followed up with him. There are potential pilots, yes, and just for anyone who's very keyed into the village, this pilot, I do not believe impacts the village because of their fiscal year, because it's outside of our fiscal year. So, from what Brian said, it's not gonna hit their budget. But it
This
will
year.
hit ours
It'll- yeah.
because our fiscal year is July 1 to June 30th.
So it'll hit their budget next year,
Yeah.
right? So they're just a year behind us. then.
Yeah.
Was there any indication of what the future of that pilot situation looked like?
That pilot will remain at $70,000 through 30,
30 years?
no, I thought it was 15,
Oh, okay.
15 to 30.
Well, that's a big difference.
Yeah.
It's
thought it
a
was
big
30
difference,
years,
but
yeah.
it has, because it's a wash, it goes in through revenue and then comes out through the tax
Mhm.
cap. Where it gets tricky, like if anyone's following Ken HUD, which
Mhm.
dealt with, some bigger issues there. Where it becomes a greater issue is when they come on and when they come off. Because that throws the calculation out of balance. So you get hit with a windfall or you get hit with a reduction.
So this isn't per se relevant to this particular budget, but just to sidestep this, when I first came on, there was an indication that there wasn't, strong communication between the village and the district regarding the planning for these projects. Has that changed, or are we still know as you need to know, or is there like some planning involved on the part of the village with respect to the impact on the district?
We have very good communication with the village and they do alert us to things. However, they are autonomous in these decisions currently. I mean, there is advocacy out there because this is, has a huge impact on school districts because of the levy. But as of now, they are somewhat autonomous in their negotiations. They have, as I said, shared information with us, timely information with us.
Yeah, and I think what the village has indicated to us in prior discussions is their commitment to having an open dialogue about these things, but to Denise's point, we don't have a seat at the table when the negotiations for what that pilot, if there would be a pilot and what that might be, we wouldn't be in the room as that's happening.
Thank you.
I have a follow-up question to that. So I know that this is also another issue that's come up in the community sort of regularly as some of this new construction is happening and we're seeing, very visible signs of development. We heard that we were going to be getting updated enrollment projections or sort of figuring that out. Is that something that we take responsibility for? Or are we taking those numbers from a village survey? For the benefit of the community? Because I think there are a lot of people who would like to know, how does that work?
So we are in the process of developing our new demographic study. We're working with the demographic agency through BOCES, and we are very close to receiving the report from that, which I will report on.
Great.
I expect to have a conversation with the committee that evaluated us and worked with the village to gather their information next week. I will say, however, that enrollment projections our enrollment projections,
Mhm.
and they can vary significantly. That I've spoken with a few colleagues, no one, with the exception of Mount Vernon, no one has received projections that were nearly accurate. They
Yeah.
were all considerably lower.
Meaning the projections were lower than the actual.
Was that just this last year, though? It wasn't, because historically it hasn't been that way, or has it? Is it always kind of off?
Our enrollment projections have been on target with the exception of last year. Last year, our projections incorporated two of the housing developments
Mhm.
within the community. They were still under considerably, and none of the housing units were occupied.
Right.
So they were incorporated, but there were no families residing in them, so they were significantly off.
So knowing that, is there something that we do differently?
Well, that's what we're working on with the agency.
Okay.
I wonder whether it's anomalous in that coming out of COVID, there was a lot of backlog in the building industry. And I kind of wonder if they thought that they were gonna be ready for occupancy earlier than they were, and we took that into account presumably. But then they did not reach the point where they were ready for occupancy, so we didn't have any kids from them.
Right, but we
But our
We'll get it
enrollment
next
is higher.
incorporated those numbers into our projections.
Right.
And our
Still.
projections were still considerably lower.
Wait, so
actual
considerably lower or
than
higher?
projected.
Yes, without the actual.
Our projections that were provided were lower.
Than the
Than
actual.
Oh, we're lower than the actual.
Considerably
Oh, okay,
lower.
so the opposite one, I understand,
Yeah.
okay.
Now, we, one of the guiding factors is live births from 5 years prior. We tend to be about between 7 and 15% above the live birth number. So as far as our growth, but that was not the case in the projections. It was much higher. So I'm curious to see, what numbers they come up with, and I will certainly share that with the board and community and the village.
It's worth pointing out that because we are a smaller district,
Impact.
it is mathematically provable that the noise in these kind of projections, the error is greater than it is in a larger district. And there's just no getting around that. That's just a fact of the math. That we have more uncertainty because we're a smaller district in our projections as a result.
More uncertainty and greater impact.
Any other questions for Denise?
Yeah, is there an opportunity with the Clean Green Schools initiative to offset some costs?
We hope so. Yes. So, back in the day, you had state aid and you had, local aid from your tax levy. Now, everything is linked to some grant that you have to apply for, that you have to adhere to. Or everything has ties and, requirements. So I'm assuming that this initiative will be grant oriented. So we'll have to apply for the grant. Generally, it's high need districts. We are generally at the bottom of the list. But I can't profess to know much about how they're going to structure this. We'll know more.
And these are part of the Inflation Reduction Act, the grants.
Thank you.
On that end, if I can
for just a quick thing, Senator Mayor's office, along with West Putt and LHEC, I believe, are going to be doing a webinar on February 1st for districts, for administration and board members who are able to join to discuss funding opportunities that are in the Inflation Reduction Act. So that might be available for schools.
Yeah, we're trying to work with BOCES to see if they can get some grant writers, because this is very nuanced and complex for districts. So if we had some grant writers who were focused on educational grants through federal funding or state funding, that would be really helpful.
There are no other questions. Thank you very much, Denise. We look forward to our next budget update. And so that will be on February 1st. We don't have a budget update on at our next meeting. All right. With that, we will move into new business. Recommended action that the Board of Education approves the memorandum of agreement between the Croton Harmon Union Free School District and the CSEA custodial unit regarding the creation of a differential for additional duties as presented.
So moved.
Second. Oh, please.
Adora?
We're talking to each other. Second.
All right, on the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Abstain? Motion carried. 3.2, recommended action that the Board of Education approves the resolution as follows. Whereas the Board of Education has determined to restructure the administrative positions within the Pupil Personnel Department, and whereas Rachel DePaul has held the position of Director of Pupil Personnel since January 21st, 2022, with her tenure date of January 20th, 2025, now be it resolved that the Board of Education abolishes the position of Director of Pupil Personnel Services effective immediately, and be it further resolved that the Board of Education creates the position of Assistant Superintendent of Pupil Personnel Services effective immediately. And be it further resolved that Ms. DePaul be appointed as Assistant Superintendent of Pupil Personnel Services effective immediately, and that she will continue to receive all terms and conditions of employment as she did as Director of Pupil Personnel Services, including time in her probationary period, as she will be performing substantially similar responsibilities in the title of Assistant Superintendent of Pupil Personnel Services.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? Motion carries. Congratulations. I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Walker, who would like to say a few words.
So this is a special night, right, for all of us who know Rachel, and I think for folks around the system. And it's pretty rare in education that we get the opportunity to lift up an individual person and to say, you know, we appreciate and value you the way that this system does. And it's an amazing thing when good things happen to good people, and it's even better when the good person has earned it the way that you have. And I was just thinking a little bit about the first time that I had the chance to meet you, and it was the fall of 2021, right, through the interview process for this position. And I remember talking extensively with John at the time and knowing that we were gonna get a chance to work with somebody who was incredibly knowledgeable and incredibly competent and was gonna do a wonderful job. What we didn't know was that we were gonna get a chance to work with somebody who is so remarkably special and has an incredible spirit and a strength and a care for kids that makes everyone around you better. And we didn't know that we were gonna get a chance to come to work with somebody who would become our friend and our family member. And all of those things are true. And we're all better in the entire system because of you. And I wanted to share just a quick story that I think in a lot of ways summarizes who Rachel is. Oh, good, all right, we got, all right, good. My work here is done. All right, good, my work here is done. So it was early, it was before 7 a.m. on winter morning, and, that's early for me to be a district officer, not for Rachel, but for some reason I was there, and Rachel was already there. And I, asked her, why are you here so early? And I could tell she wasn't excited to tell me, but I kept bothering her, so eventually she did tell me, and she shared that she had been engaging with a family who had been going through some crisis, trying to get their child to go to school, to get on the bus every morning, and the young man would not get on the bus, and the family was just at their wits' end. And Rachel does what she does, which is make a connection with that family and with that child and make a difference in their lives. So she had gotten up early that morning, and as a result of a promise she'd made to that young man, went and bought him a breakfast sandwich and met him at the bus stop and told him that if you come to the bus stop and get on the bus, I'll bring you this breakfast sandwich as my way of saying, you took a step today. And it's that sort of commitment to our kids that nobody else knows about because she's too humble to share it. But the way that she loves kids in this system is profound. It genuinely makes all of us better. And it is an honor to work with you. It's an honor to recommend you for this. It's an honor to celebrate this with you and to be a part of your family. So congratulations, Rachel. We love you.
Like bacon, egg, and cheese.
Yes, yes.
I'll bring it for you. I'm very emotional all the time, so I try. So I'd like to take this opportunity to express my gratitude to the Board of Education for allowing me the privilege to continue the work that I love to do and to do it in a place that I've grown to love. Superintendent Walker and district leadership team, you've been a source of support and more times than not have been a sounding board for my crazy ideas. And remarkably, I'm met with, wow, that's a great idea. Let's make it happen. What do you need from us? That means a lot to me. The entire leadership team has provided me with unwavering support in my vision of what PPS can be. I'm grateful for the PPS staff and the teams at each school whose commitment to the school community has supported the growth of every student. So thank you for the opportunity to continue my work here.
Couple of gifts for you, as well as the gift of, as an assistant superintendent, the chance to attend all board meetings.
I want to sit near Neil.
Yeah.
A lot of money. I gotta use the filter, we use the other. What would you like me to do?
You have your.
Yeah. Oh, my God. Oh, sorry.
Let's go with a mug shot.
Thank you.
Go to the right.
Yeah, he's gonna look like.
Take a mug shot.
Put it on.
Right.
Right. Wow, this is slightly anticlimactic to follow up with. We'll move on to ongoing business. And recommended action that the Board of Education conducts a second reading and adopts the following board policies as presented.
Actually, before you move, Madam,
Certainly,
there's a minor typo
certainly.
that I have noted in policy 4327
Okay,
in the cross references.
okay.
All the way at the bottom of the last page.
Yep.
It should be Program, 4321, programs for students with disabilities under federal ID and New York education law, Article 89. I've read this like 20 times, I only just now noticed it.
All right, well, with that then, amendment there, could I get, someone to move this?
I move to adopt, move to adopt, am I
Yeah.
moving to adopt?
You
I
are?
move to adopt these two policies.
Well, all right, can I get a second?
Second?
All right, and on the question, I know in the absence of our policy chair, Josh or Theo, did you want to speak to these policies? Aside from our typo correction?
I can speak briefly. These are both new policies and they're both based on adjustments that have happened to ed law and to federal law that require them. Homebound instruction is 4327 is all about making sure that we have policies and procedures in place for students who, for whatever reason, need to have instruction at home because they cannot attend school. That could be due to illness, that could be due to other reasons. But this sets forth the details of that as required by law. The other policy is sets forth the rights of employees to express breast milk in the workplace. This is subsequent to changes in New York state law that require this. We started with the NISBA recommended policy, but made some specific adjustments that are appropriate to the specific needs here in Croton. It was somewhat complicated in that the sample policy we received had a lot of clauses in it that were not at all applicable to a school environment, basically having been copied directly out of some sample policy that applies also to businesses and municipal governments. So we had to adjust that, and that's where this policy comes from.
Great, and it's my understanding that neither had material changes since first reading.
That is correct.
All right, any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? Motion carries.
You're more than welcome to
More than
stay
welcome.
again.
You can stay for the rest of it if
You
you'd
may
like.
want to celebrate us, so
Yeah.
feel free.
Nice evening.
Have a great evening.
Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks, meeting all of
Thanks.
you.
Yes.
Yeah, have a great night.
All right, we will now move into donations. Recommended action that the Board of Education gratefully accepts a donation of $500 from the Croton Harmon High School PTSA to support the Chinese Exchange Club's trip to Taiwan.
So moved.
Second?
On the question?
I have a question. Specifically, what is this, what are they supporting? I
They-
thought the program was like individually funded.
It's individually funded, but I do believe that if there is a need for a student who would not be able to afford the funding for the
I
trip,
see.
there are funds available for that.
Although this is just a small percentage of the cost of the trip, right?
Correct.
A pretty, like, less than 20%, I think, right? Something like that.
Yes, yeah, I think so. It was a fairly expensive trip.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's great that there's a donation. It's just to acknowledge it's a very expensive trip, and so it's an expensive trip.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Abstain? Motion carries. Recommended action that the Board of Education gratefully accepts a donation of $300 from the Croton Caring Committee Incorporated to support the Chinese Exchange Club's trip to Taiwan.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? Motion carries.
Recommended action that the Board of Education approves the donation amendment as presented.
So moved.
Second,
On the question? Just to note, this is the donation that we had approved at the December 21st meeting that I spoke about in my. So it is amended to include that the donation has come from the Croton Caring Committee and the Knights of Columbus.
So does that mean we received two separate checks, or was it directed to us through one, or?
It's two separate checks.
Two separate checks?
But it was directed under one donation application.
Okay, understood. Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose, abstain? Motion carries.
Yeah.
All right, we will now move into the consent agenda. Recommended action that the Board of Education approves the consent agenda items as presented.
So moved.
second,
On the question? Yes.
I'm sorry. If I could request that the item 6.9, the bid award in Milcon Construction Court.
Mhm.
In reading the resolution language.
Mhm.
I'd like to actually pull that from the agenda if possible, from the consent agenda, because it doesn't reflect another piece of the puzzle, which is a rejection of another bidder.
Certainly.
And so this can wait until the 18th, if we could do that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And we'll amend that to remove 6.9 from the consent agenda. Could I get
I move to
motion.
remove 6.9 from the consent agenda.
I second that.
do we need to do the same for 6.10?
No.
right? Okay,
Is it because of dollar value?
They didn't meet the qualifications, so they were disqualified due to, the term is non-responsive.
Hmm.
But when we evaluated the bid proposal, it was lacking in some areas, so we did a requalification meeting with them, of which they were not able to supply the
but 6.10 was the
6.10
lowest.
was fine, yes.
Mhm.
I apologize for that, I didn't,
No, that's good, all right. All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose, abstain? Motion carries. All right, we will now then move to the closing of the meeting, and we will open our second hearing of the public. We ask that anyone who would like to speak, do so at the podium, provide your name and contact information. And please keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Say just pretty much in practice with other districts that I'm familiar with is the promotion of Rachel Paul as well. And it's always a pleasure with dealing with a person of that type of personality. And the one thing I'd like to retract is, the one thing you do learn at this meeting is you learn the finance of this district, as illustrated by your treasurer. Other than that, sometimes we're really left in the dark and questions not asked. That's why we need more diversity in this board. There are gonna be a lot of challenges ahead for your students. Right now, CVS and the federal government is pushing abortion pills into the local pharmacies down here. Those abortion pills will wind up in your medicine cabinets, whether you want it or not, as people share these pills. You're gonna have a marijuana dispensary down at ShopRite. And if you follow through with this medical ethics major, I don't believe this board, this high school is capable of handling the issues involving abortion, euthanasia, mercy killing, surrogacy, experimentation on children, experimentation on adults, the COVID mishandling, which we continue to read about. You're not equipped to do that. What I would like to say is that I have noticed is you send delegates back and forth to different Board of Education associations. And it's really a scandal to me. In those discussions about what you propose, what you want to support, et cetera, I've never heard with any type of conviction, we cannot tolerate school districts like Syracuse, New York. We cannot tolerate 8 million immigrants illegally being dumped on school districts, not to their fault, they were invited. And just the deterioration of education in general. As a person who's spent a lot of time in education, when we hear the latest test scores in terms of competency in English and math, we're highly skeptical of the entire educational establishment on what those tests were and what they measure. Because in the past, this state has a history of dumbing down scores. At the same time, you're saying, let's get away from standardized testing. College is going back to standardized testing. And standardized testing is demanded of every one of your AP courses.
Great, with that, we will move into board reports. First up, advocacy.
So while the advocacy committee has not met, since our last report, we submitted, on behalf of the Board of Education, a letter of support to the Village of Croton-on-Hudson's grant application to New York State Department of Transportation for a Transportation Alternatives Program grant that specifically covers improvements to the Cleveland Drive corridor. As we stated in our letter, the Cleveland Drive corridor is a main route for students walking to all three of our school buildings, CET, PVC, and high school, as well as to the Croton Free Library. And we also believe that Croton is a community that promotes walking as a means of travel, recreation, and fitness for our residents and visitors to Croton. So we have put our support behind the village's grant application, along with a few other organizations within the village, and we hope that the village will hear good news from the state to proceed and receive state funding for those improvements.
Anything else?
Nope, that's
All
it.
right. Audit.
Audit is meeting on February 1st. Go ahead and jump into board development.
Go right ahead. Move
Um,
right along.
Thank you all for participating in the feedback survey on the board retreat last 2 weeks ago. Last week, sorry, last week.
Last week.
There was one happening. Last week, board development is meeting next week. We're gonna debrief, digest the feedback, tweak subsequent board development agenda and topics for discussion. So again, thank you all for those that submitted feedback. That's it for development.
Thank you. Communications.
Communications met, last week. We reviewed some of our old business, outreach to Spanish-speaking communities, consistency with hashtags across the PTA and FECTA. There was an inquiry as to how well Parent Square was going, and John Griffiths provided us with an update that 100% of the households in our district are contactable, which is amazing. And so useful given like the weather that we've had, all the other things that we've had happen in our district. We, as a board, had some questions about communications internally and, some of our communications and how they go out. We're gonna follow up with, Dr. Basashia about that. We discussed further some of our in-person public outreach in lieu of doing our traditional, coffees at the Black Cow. And we had some ideas regarding that, that I think we're still brainstorming and we're gonna follow up on. Some of that was, maybe making ourselves available as board members to meet with the community individually. in conjunction with the administration and board leadership. Obviously, we're, constantly discussing our budget presentations and our communication with the public regarding our budget. Publicizing and sharing information regarding upcoming ideas and meetings. And then, our upcoming board elections and developing a timeline with respect to, making the public aware of what the process looks like, directing them to our, tab, on the website regarding, deadlines and the process. There was a side conversation regarding the community reaching out to us via the website, and using the Board of Education email versus using the form, because the form is directed to the Communications Committee and the board, the BOE@CHUFSD.org goes to board leadership. So I think that's a separate conversation that we need to have, and maybe, come up with a streamline regarding that, which we touched upon, at, our board retreat also. But, we have a meeting set up, I think right now there's a doodle and a potential date, for the first week in February. And that's where we're.
Great, thank you very much. Policy, Josh, anything?
The policy committee met on, I'm looking at the wrong, no, this is the correct agenda. It has the wrong date on the top of it. The policy committee met on December the 21st. And covered several topics, obviously 9520.6 and 4327, which we conducted a second reading tonight and adopted tonight. There was a discussion of policy 8130.2, workplace violence protection. This is a new policy that is required by law. We will be hopefully finishing that up and have it ready for further review at our next meeting, which I expect to be in the first week of February. We finished up the preliminary discussion of social media policies 4526.2 and 2901, which govern use of social media in instruction and official communications, and social media use by trustees, respectively, and pass that off to administration for review by administrative council and for review, for an initial quick review by district council. Theo, did I miss anything there?
No, I mean, I think the only other piece that we were able to start on at our last meeting was reviewing a very initial draft of the diversity, equity, inclusion policy that we had an initial session on some time ago, just to kind of give some parameters and overall structure and ideas to. This particular session on the draft policy was very helpful to hear people's thoughts about the particular areas and whether we're getting the right balance of, I think fully defining what we mean by DEI, and then also how it might apply to different areas of our district and our district life, from, of course, the teaching, but also family and community engagement, the diversity of our workforce, the training of our workforce, et cetera. So it was extremely productive, very helpful. We're going to keep working on this policy in meetings to come. I think we're already have a doodle for a session in the next several weeks. So this is going to be on the agenda to continue working on.
Great, thank you both. And then the ad hoc committee on facilities use.
The ad hoc committee will be meeting this Saturday at the Black Cow. The meeting has been noticed. And we will continue to, you know, address the issue. Josh provided an update. We haven't met since then. So.
All right, polling of the board. Does anyone have anything for polling? Anna?
I attended the back to school night, which was a follow-up, I think, for parents to the round robin for the 9th and 10th grade parents last night. The guidance team at the high school was there along with Mr. Maxim. There is a lot of excitement and I think questions regarding the new SUNY Albany courses. I want to commend the district on taking that on and kind of like being on the next frontier of what AP classes look like and what allowing our students to have, you know, actual college transcripts with credits on them upon graduation. I think it's really exciting. It's a financial, it has a huge financial impact on families in the district. But there were a lot of questions. So I would just encourage parents to reach out to, you know, high school administration and the guidance team and just really wrap your head around what the best choices are for your students and to follow up with those questions because everybody's willing to spend as much time as necessary to explain the different options. And all of the options actually exist. The Mr. Maxim represented that, you know, teachers are willing to help students still coach them to get to pass the AP exams. You're able to take these classes and not take college credit. You're also able to take these classes and accumulate college credit and have an actual college transcript. So I think it's really exciting. But there were definitely a lot of questions surrounding that next step and what it looks like to get those advanced classes into our schools.
Josh?
Yes, I just wanted to call to administration's attention and to the board's attention that there is chatter going on. I had actually 2 different people contacted me about concerns that there is, quote, a high rate of whooping cough at the high school. And it might be something that we just might want to check in with the nurses about. I just heard about this today. So just providing a little bit of information that might be worth checking into. Especially concerning to me, since it is a disease which is eminently preventable with vaccination, with proven vaccinations that have been in use for many, many years. I do grow concerned when I hear a preventable disease that's actively being spread and potentially actively being spread in the community. And I believe we have requirements that when we detect cases, know of cases like that, I believe there's a reporting requirement. I'm not 100% certain of that, but I want to check in with the nurses on that.
Well, the PVC Building Planning Council met last week. And we canceled previously because not enough people could attend. We discussed the transition from CET to PVC, the kind of hidden transition from 6th to 7th grade and then transition to high school. We spent a lot of time talking about the transition from CET to PVC, and there's going to be conversation between 2 building leaders about finding ways to bridge that gap between 4th and 5th grade. So
Sounds good. I have quite a few, but I'll make it quick. So back in December, I think this happened after our last meeting where we had polling of the board. I did attend, and this is sort of on behalf of the advocacy committee, the Lower Hudson Education Coalition's legislative panel, where we had representatives, including several of our state senators and our own assembly member, Dana Levenberg, talking about what they see as the issues that we're facing. A lot of this was covered again with the, you know, the state of the state address from Governor Hochul, but just the outlook for us in terms of funding and sort of like what the opportunities are and what the legislative priorities are going to be there. I think that I may have somewhere buried in my email, like something that's written up that will be more concise to share. So I can certainly do that. And I think did you listen in on that too? It was a good
I also
session.
attended a
Yeah.
very good session.
Yeah, and there seem to be more coming because I think perhaps there wasn't enough. So, if I can find a date for the other one, I'll try to pull that.
It's February first is West Putt's legislative.
That's
forum,
what
which
it is.
Unfortunately conflicts with a
With
board.
us, yeah, it happens. I also had that same night, I think, got to go to PVC PTA, and I just want to commend them again, both as like a middle school parent and also just sort of, listening in on their meetings. They're just have such an innovative approach to, I think, fundraising, because we know once we get to middle school, participation in PTA is sort of like, it's not quite what it is at sort of the younger level. And I think they're doing a really good job of thinking of creative ways to be able to raise money to support all the incredible field trips and sort of like enrichment opportunities that are afforded to students at the middle school. So kudos to them for that. Two more, sorry, just have to get through all of it. CHHS Building Planning Council met last week, and we had a really interesting discussion about the question of AI and plagiarism. The high school is starting to look at their policies on some of this stuff, and some of it, hasn't been updated in a while. So they're starting to take a look at what the language is and to see what really makes sense in terms of our goals for kids, in terms of what they should be learning and how they're making use of some of the technologies that weren't available when these policies were written. So it was a really interesting conversation, particularly from the student participants at Building Planning Council at the high school, who never cease to impress me with their thoughtfulness and their contributions to the discussion. It's really pretty interesting and invested group of students. So I really enjoy those. Speaking of invested groups of students, I just wanted to thank the district for putting me in touch with my very own personal pen pal, who is a sophomore at Croton Harmon High School. If you recall, earlier this year, all of us received a letter from a student in the district, and I have struck up a correspondence with mine. And so we actually had our first meeting this week, and she shared with me a list of things that she is thinking about. She actually had an opportunity to speak with some of her classmates and elevated some of the things that I think are concerns for them on a day-to-day basis. One of the things that she asked for, and I will be bringing this to the communications committee, but I wanted to say it for the benefit of the community as well, is that I think there are students at the high school who feel like they really have some things they'd like to share with the board. And, coming to a meeting like this at 7 o'clock on a Thursday night, it's not necessarily like it doesn't fit in with everyone's schedule because people have to go to school the next day. So it might be interesting to think about opportunities that we could create for when we're talking about elevating student voices and making sure student voices are at the table beyond, of course, the student that we do have at our table. It's something for us to consider. So I just wanted to formally state that it was great feedback and we're working on it. And thank you for the meeting. I'm leaving this person's name anonymous, but I think she's great. That's it for me.
All right, thank you. Anyone else have anything for Polly? Oops. I just had a couple of very, very quick,
Sarah, if I could just share, I
Sure.
received some more information on the pilot. So it's a 30-year pilot.
Okay, great, thank you.
And it has a 3% escalation on that.
Is that 3% per annum?
all right. Just a real quick, in terms of, some upcoming West Putt events, on January 22nd. The West Putt will be holding another, community conversation, which is a great opportunity for board members, to attend and be able to speak with other area board members about, different matters that affect all of us in our service. The theme of this meeting will be communications. There is a survey out from West Putt that we would encourage all board members to fill out and submit. The sort of discussion, that survey will be a springboard to that discussion that evening. And any and all board members are more than welcome to attend. I've found them to be really, really great conversations in the past. Highly encourage it. The other thing I noted was that on February, as I said, on February first, there will be a webinar during the day. I will get the information and share that with everyone as with regard to the time from Senator Mayer's office to discuss funding opportunities from the Inflation Reduction Act. And then thirdly is the capital conference, so the NISBA Capital Conference, which is a virtual half-day conference, will be on February 2nd. Everybody should have gotten that email. You can actually register yourself. It doesn't need to be handled through Denise. They're usually really great sessions that kind of go through what the governor's budget is, what some of the legislative priorities are, what NISBA's and other school districts' positions are on some of the legislative priorities, and provides a really good breakdown of things. There's generally a session with someone from the governor's office and from SED discussing the budget priorities. So I would encourage anyone who has the availability to sign up for that. And that is really all. That's it for me. So that we will move into items needed for the next Board of Education meeting, which will be next week on January 18th. Will be our work session, and our work session will be a two-pronged work session in that we will be hearing a presentation on where we are with the equity stakeholder recommendations, how things have been progressing and what's going on in the district. As we've been working on those in about 2 years now since those recommendations came forward to the board originally. And then we will also be hearing an update on the future facilities project from our architects. I think that's all. Right? Nothing else we've got for that meeting. So that is it. Does anybody have any other questions? Any other comments they'd like to bring forth? All right, well, in that case, recommended action that the Board of Education adjourn our meeting at 9:13 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose, abstain, motion carries. Thank you very much and have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you.